Okay, we will we'll start the class. So just hello, came just in time. Okay, so today we're going to start the melacha. The one of the 39 melachot is, which loosely translates to separating. Basically, this is one of the like we said, one of the 39 melachot. It is if someone transgresses this, he did a transgression from the Torah, and in the olden days when we had a Beit Din, and they had two witnesses to not to do it, and you knew the ramifications. If you did borer, you would be liable to stoning. Nowadays, there's no stoning, so.
It says, what's the word you use?
Skila, exactly. Mm-hmm. So, on Shabbat, it is forbidden to pick unwanted material from food in which it is mixed. It is forbidden even if one only uses his hand and intends to eat it immediately after separating the undesired material. One who performs this act transgresses a capital offense of Shabbat desecration. So we're going to see in a second that there's 3 rules to borer. The 3 rules is it has to be by hand. It has to be immediate use, and we'll see what that means in a second. And it also has to be separating the good from the bad, and not the bad from the good. So what does that mean? So for example, if I have a salad and I don't like the tomatoes, I can't take out the tomatoes. Even though I'm eating the salad right now and I'm using my hand, I'm taking the bad, which is, for me, the bad is the tomatoes, from the good, which is the salad, and therefore that's borer. I would be violating Shabbat from the Torah. So one becomes guilty of this capital offense even if one removes only some of the unwanted material and there is still some mixed in the food. For example, if I'm eating the salad with the tomatoes, I see one of them doesn't look nice, and I only take that one. I'm not taking all the tomatoes from the salad. I'm only taking the one that I don't like. Still, that's enough to be considered borer, and it would be a capital offense from the Torah.
If there's some kind of effect with it, or let's say you see a bug or something.
So even then, you'd have to take the good from the bad. Even if you see a bug, and we'll get to that in a second. Even if you see a bug, you can't take the bug. You can't take the bug because that would be considered borer. So you'd have to take the salad that you want that doesn't have the bug in it from the bug. So it's a roundabout way of doing it, but that's how we're supposed to do it. Again, the reason for these halachot, these melachot, was because these were some of the classic cases that were used in the times of the inauguration of the Mishkan and the building of the Mishkan, and so borer, the why it's bad was when they used to clean the kernels of wheat, they would remove the pebbles and from the mixture, and so that is constituted as borer, and because of that melacha, that act, we nowadays don't do that on Shabbat. So we said, yeah, okay. So even if the volume of the food far exceeds that of the unwanted material, and it is far easier to remove the unwanted material from the mixture that it would be to remove food from the mixture, it is nevertheless forbidden to remove the unwanted mixture from unwanted material from the mixture. So today we're talking about borer, separation. It's one of the 39 menachot on Shabbat. If one is separating from the Torah, let's see everyone then. If someone does the separation on Shabbat, we're going to see more in a second, but we said the 3 conditions in order to separate on Shabbat. It has to be with your hand, it has to be for immediate use. We're going to see what immediate use means, and it also has to be, we said with our hand, immediate use, and the good from the bad, and not the bad from the good. We said what's the good from the bad and bad from the good is, for example, if I have a salad and I don't like the tomatoes in the salad, I cannot take the tomatoes out of the salad even with my hands, and I want to eat the salad now. And we said even if there was a bug on one of the tomatoes, you can't take that out because, again, that's going to be considered borer. Also, like we're saying now, even if it's a small, it's just to make a salad, it's very big, then it's still considered borer, and would not be allowed. So when we said by hand, it means that you choose any other material other also. So for example, if someone wants to use a sieve, that would be considered borer, doing the separation, and you have borer separating. Furthermore, separates food from a mixture by hand, intending to leave it late that day, or let's say he separates it at night and he wants it in the morning, that also will not be good. That's the clause of the immediate. So we said things for borer is with our hand, immediate, and we're going to see what immediate means. It doesn't mean that I'm taking it now and I'm going to eat it right now. We'll see exactly what that time span is, and also it has to be good from the bed. Once you know those three, that's basically borer. You would think it's that simple, but of course, it's never that simple because we're Jews. So even when the amount of undesired material greatly exceeds the volume of the food, and separating the food from it is extremely tedious. So let's say there's nuts in the salad, and the nuts are, there's so many nuts, and it's still the salad is much bigger. And you would say, it's easier to take the nuts from the salad instead of me taking now the salad and putting it on my plate away from the nuts. Even then, even if it's harder, it's that's part of the halacha, and you would not be able to separate it. Now, once you did separate it, it's something interesting. You can carry the bowl place to place, but and it's not a problem. So you might take that act when you separated the food, it might become muktzah because you don't want to use it. So we're saying that that's the case even then, since it's food, and we'll see that there's only certain time when we do muktzah, and there's only certain times when food can become muktzah, mainly if it's not edible. But if it's edible food, then it's usually good. For example, frozen meat, right? Frozen meat that's not used on Shabbat, it's raw. That is most likely muktzah. So furthermore, even if the food consists of small particles and the undesired material consists of large particles, making it far more difficult to remove the food from the thick mixture that it would be to remove the undesirable material from the desirable, one may only separate the food from the mixture. Again, you're only taking the good from the bad and not the bad from the good. It says that in this case, though, however, it is permissible to instruct a non-Jew to separate the undesirable material from the mixture on Shabbat if one intends to eat it immediately. So if it's maybe dangerous, even I don't know of a case, but let's say it's peanuts and he's allergic to peanuts. Again, and it's difficult for him to take out all the peanuts. He can instruct a non-Jew to do it for him, and that would be permissible, but he himself cannot do it. So it is forbidden by our sages for someone to separate food from a mixture on Shabbat using a tool that is not made specifically for the purpose of separating, but it was kind of used. So, for example, if a pot cover isn't made for separating, but let's say I'm using it to separate the soup from the matzah balls, right? Even though that it's made for covering the soup. It's not made for using it to separate. Even then, it's not allowed. But that's from the sages and not from the Torah. Again, nowadays there's no difference. The sages say something, you have to listen to them just as the Torah says. So when we have that kind of case where you're using a instrument or you're using something that wasn't intended for separating, it's still not allowed on Shabbat. I guess to give an example here, that they some kind of triangular funnel that it is used by placing beans mixed with dirt in the wide end and then shaking it, and then the round beans roll through the narrow end, and fall through its opening, leaving the irregularly shaped gravel and dirt behind. If anyone knows how that looks or how it works, please let me know, because I'm not too familiar with that. And any questions until now? Okay. Let's see any questions here. Okay. So let's say you're eating your rice and chicken, and you see I guess vegetables in the rice mixed with it. You don't like vegetables. I don't like too much vegetables, so I sometimes put the vegetables to the side. And I'm not going to use my hands because I'm eating with a fork and a knife or a spoon. So is that allowed? Can I separate it with the spoon or the fork? So again, separating the vegetables from the rice or from vegetables. If we're taking the rice from the vegetables, even though I'm using a spoon or a fork, that's considered an extension of my hand. So even though it's not my hand that's doing it, it's not by hand, it's by the extension of my hand. So the fork or the spoon, I'm able to use that as a extension of my hand. So if I wanted to take the rice from the vegetables, I can take it with the spoon or the fork, and it's not an issue. But I cannot take the vegetables and separate it from the rice with a spoon or a fork. Not because it's a spoon or a fork, but because you're taking the bad from the good, and we're only supposed to take the good from the bad. So while one is in the midst of eating a meal, one may separate food from a mixture even if no one will eat that food for 3 hours or more, so long as the meal continues and the separated food will be eaten at this meal. So the Yemenites and a lot of other, I guess, sects they have a tradition, especially on Shabbat. I remember Rav Shimon was telling me that they in the morning in the meal they would sit and they would extend the meal for hours and sing and tell stories and speak words of the Torah. And so, and it wouldn't be a 20, 30-minute hour lunch. It would go to 3, 4, 5 hours. So if someone wants to say, I don't know, something at the beginning of the meal, he can do that even though he might not be eating from that until 3 or 4 hours later, as long as it's still within the meal. Okay? But if he wants to separate it after he for something he's going to do after saying Birkat Hamazon. So, for example, he wants to eat dessert after Birkat Hamazon. He's right now separating the nuts from the ice cream. Right, that's not allowed. He's waiting after Birkat Hamazon, and it's considered now a separation. Once he does infringed on that part of the immediate. In the meal hours, it's still considered part of that immediate clause. But once you say Birkat Hamazon, even if it's maybe a minute before Birkat Hamazon, it's not immediate anymore because the Birkat Hamazon has constituted as a separation. So it's kind of like a hefsek. It's a separation. So it separates the meal from the dessert or whatever comes after the meal. So if he separated, even if he did everything good, he separated with his hand and he separated the good from the bad, it infringes immediate clause, and he would be doing a prohibition from Torah. If someone wishes to separate food from a mixture before the meal begins, he may do so only just before the meal. So we said after the meal, after Birkat Hamazon, that's no good. And we said during the meal, that's fine, as long as he does good from bad and he does it with his hand or an extension of his hand. Now, what about before the meal? The wives are at home making the salad, and they know that the husbands don't like the tomatoes in the salad. So the good wives, they take the tomatoes out of the salad, right? Or they take the salad and they make sure that half of it has the salad for the husband and half of it has the tomatoes for the wife. When can they do this? Do they have to do it as soon as the husband walks in the door and he's about to say kiddush? Is there a time span? So one should be careful to perform the necessary separations immediately before beginning the meal. so that there's basically no time gap at all. But of course, sometimes that's not practical, and we'll see that it can be it can be 15 to 20 minutes before. I think, but the halakha here says that a woman should any access before the Shabbat meal, whether it's the morning. Usually, it's the morning meal that you have to worry about the separation. Usually, the evening meal is before Shabbat. Sometimes before the actual Shabbat. Sometimes when we come home nowadays, it's still light outside, so it's not a big deal then. But in the morning, when it's still Shabbat, we'll see that the woman should delay their acts of separation just before their husbands return from synagogue. So that's the halacha, and it just makes you think. Right now, if you know that your husband's going to come home at 11:30 or 12, to make sure you do it maybe at 11:10, 11 or 11:20. So just make sure that the separation is done relatively close to the meal. You don't want to wake up, do all the preparation, and then an hour later the husband comes home, and then what? And then you've technically, even though you did everything well, you technically did the prohibition of borer. If one is having a snack and not at a meal, so that was the halakha during a meal. So we said before the meal, it should be relatively close to the meal for that to be considered immediate. During the meal, it doesn't matter what time, as long as it's within the meal, it's considered immediate. And then if you did it at the beginning.
So we want to do as
So
like is one more preferable than the other?
It's of course it's preferable to do it as close as possible. So if they're doing